All right, welcome to the Industry 45 podcast show. I'm your host, Shane Christopher Neal. All podcasts are available, by the way, gianttv.ca, new website for all the podcast shows for Giant TV Niagara. Today, real special guest, great guy. His name is Rob Mount. Happens to be a drummer. Go figure. Seems to be a trend here on the Industry 45 show. He's from Rochester, New York. He's played a number of years with Lou Gramm, recorded songs with Lou Gramm, and he also recently played in a band called Scrap Metal. He did a fill-in gig, but what a fill-in gig it was. We're going to talk about that. Wait till you hear who's in Scrap Metal and what that whole project is all about. He's got some great influences. People like Peter Criss, of course, of Kiss, John Bonham, Neil Peart, Tommy Aldridge, Steve Gadd, and Steve Smith of Journey. We're going to talk about drumming in general. We're talking about drumming with Lou Gramm. We're going to talk about his drums, in particular his drum set, a little bit about Scrap Metal, and a bunch of really cool things. And, of course, the all-important question, his thoughts on the Motley Crue tour in 2020. Stick around. Don't go anywhere. The Industry 45 podcast show is up next with Mr. Rob Mount. All right, again, Industry 45 podcast show, Shane Christopher Neal, and just I have to say thank you so much, by the way, to the Maysides, right? That intro is absolutely killer. Good friends of mine. Check out the Maysides on Facebook. That song is called Loved and Lost. Also, gianttv.ca is the new website for all podcast shows that are on Giant TV. We've got sports, we got politics, we got music, we got food, you name it. It's all right there, gianttv.ca. On YouTube, Giant TV Niagara, and of course, giantfm.com and country89.com. And finally, Industry 45 podcast show now has a Facebook page. I would appreciate if you like that as well. So now we get to it. It seems like every time I want to talk to somebody, they happen to be a drummer. Go figure. Mr. Rob Mount, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much, Shane. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And sure, sounds like fun.
So it's funny because I've heard of Lou Gramm, obviously, and I knew that you were the drummer, didn't put it all together till Mitch's podcast. I was like, I got to talk to this guy because I think you have a really good story being a guy who makes a living playing drums. And, I don't want to get too much into your background. I want to get more into the times, I guess, where you got into playing with Lou. And were you always a Foreigner fan? And how did you kind of make that connection with Lou Gramm?
Okay, well, I'll try and make that one as short as possible. Well, first of all, Lou Gramm is from the same town that I, am from and still live in, which is Rochester, New York. So Lou has always been, the hometown hero of Rochester. So it's kind of hard to grow up in Rochester and not be, a Lou Gramm Foreigner fan. So, yeah, always was. I'd go see him here at the local War Memorial back in the day when Foreigner would come around. And, it's one of those things when you're a 17-year-old kid out there in the audience watching a guy like that, or the band in general, or any band, but especially Lou. And, you always envision yourself up there on stage, and little did I know that someday it would happen. Never in a million years do you expect it sometimes. But so grew up being a big fan. Everybody around here is a huge fan of his. He's a great guy. He's always around town. He goes to car shows. He's a big car buff. He doesn't hide from people. So, and everybody meets him, knows he's a cool dude. Everybody loves the guy. So that's, growing up, of course, always a Foreigner fan. And this is, I think what you said is, how did I get in the band? I think is what you asked.
Yeah. Like, how did you get, because was his brother not the drummer for a while in his band?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, try and make a long story short. So way, way, way back, me, our guitar player Mike, our keyboard player Andy, and a couple other guys had a Foreigner tribute band way back. And the singer of that band, one of the two that we had, was Lou's brother Ben. His son was our singer. So Lou's nephew was a singer in a Foreigner tribute band that we had going way back. And funnily enough, the first time I met Lou was when he brought him down to practice in our guitar player's basement. It's the first time I ever met the guy. I was in the basement of a house rehearsing for this show. So we did there was like a cancer tribute fundraiser type thing. And we did like 4 songs with Lou at that point. Little did we know most of that band at that time would go on years later to be actually in Lou's band. And so fast forward a little while later, Lou had started out solo after Foreigner and after he was sick and ill with his cancer stuff. And he started out with his brother Ben on drums and his other brother Dick on guitar and bass and a couple other guys. And that went for a while until things started happening where members started shifting in and out. And as it ended up, long story short, I subbed for Ben in 2009. There's a show out in California, and on 3 days' notice, I got a phone call to go do the show because Ben was in the hospital. He had gotten sick, and I knew the songs because I did them. I only had to learn maybe 2 out of the ones that they did because I had never played maybe 2 of them. So I went out there and did that show, and that was the first time that I actually played with Lou in his band anyways. Prior to that, I also had recorded with Lou because Ben lives in New York City, and everybody else was here in Rochester. So they wanted to re-record bits and pieces of Foreigner songs to be used in radio ads and for promotional purposes because Lou didn't have the rights to use the original Foreigner recording. So I went in and recorded bits and pieces of like 8 or 9 songs. And then I also I also practiced with Lou because Lou has a studio here in Rochester and they wanted to do some rehearsing for something. And again, I got the call to do that because I'm here and Ben's in New York and he didn't need to come in and do that. So that's kind of the beginning of where it went. And then eventually Ben ended up retiring from the band. And, then I got the call for that too, because at that point, all my friends were in the band. The guys that were in that Foreigner tribute band way, way back were pretty much the guys that were in Lou's band. So it was kind of a logical choice in a way. So that's kind of the shortest version I can give you.
It's funny because a story, I don't even know when it goes back, but I was in Niagara Falls, New York at the Hard Rock. Ben was drumming. If I'm not mistaken, Ben is bald, is he not? And the reason I say that is, and he has a bandana on his head because I went to the beer tent. True story. I was there for sound check. I went to the beer tent to buy a beer, and the girl says to me, "Oh, you're the drummer in the band. Here, just take it." And I was like, well, that worked out okay for me. So that was the only time I think I've ever seen Lou Gramm solo. Like I said, big Foreigner fan. Were there any challenges as a drummer playing with Lou? Did you ever think do you look at the original songs and try to play the licks the same way? Do you add your personality in? What does Lou say, I guess, about the way you play the songs as to how they were originally played?
Good question. I don't think anybody's ever really asked me that before. So a little bit of both because, I whenever I learn music for whatever it is I'm doing, whether it's Lou or this scrap metal gig I just did, I try to drill into my brain the original stuff, the original drumming, the original style. I try to at least take that as a starting point. And then I interject a little bit of myself into that because let's face it, I'm not going to be I can't be a better Dennis Elliott than Dennis Elliott already is. You know what I mean? He's already got Dennis Elliott covered. So what I did was I tried to stick to the original plot, so to speak, but interject myself. And when I first rehearsed with Lou, it's kind of funny because after the first rehearsal, I could see that he was happy. I knew he was happy. He was, commenting on my playing a little bit. And I went up to him and I said, "What do you think?" And he said to me, he goes, "It sounds really good." He goes, "But that one little part and feels like the first time," which is there's a section right before the chorus where Dennis kind of gave it a disco-y kind of feel with kind of a disco hi-hat, open and closed, kind of sloshy feel, which, people can go back and listen to that if they want to hear what I'm talking about. But he goes, "That part and feels like the first time." He goes, I go, "Yeah?" And he goes, "Please don't ever do that again. I always hated that."
Well, there you go. Are there songs?
So I got a little too close.
Are there songs that, let's say, you prefer to play Foreigners than others? Like, I'm just thinking, is there something that stands out, like Hot Blooded, which is kind of a really cool drumming song that you kind of really like playing? And are there any of them challenging you as a drummer, right? Because sometimes when you're, quote, playing cover songs, you get to things and then go, that's just not me, and I don't really have that kind of feel, and I'm not really delivering it maybe the way I should. Any of those songs that stand out or no?
Well, as far as the favorite ones to play, I don't know. I can't think of anything that are big favorites. I mean, maybe if I had to say a couple, like, a lot of them were in the beginning of the set, actually, so you could kind of say it was all downhill from there. No, I'm joking, but like the first few songs, like we started out with "Long Way from Home," and that's such a great song. I love that song. So that was always the first song, and then we would go right into "Feels Like the First Time," which, another great song. I always loved that, and one of the highlights of the show was when we did "Urgent," because our sax guy, who was Scott Gilman, who was in Foreigner in the mid-'90s with Lou, he would go out in the audience 99% of the time and do the sax solo while running through the crowd. And it was always fun to watch him do that. We would extend it a little bit, as Foreigner has been doing the last maybe 10, 12 years. We kind of do what they did and extended it. So to watch him out there and the crowd going nuts while he's doing that was always pretty cool. So some good times. As far as go ahead.
No, go ahead. Continue.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as things that I didn't adjust well to, or whatever, the second half of your question, that it just kind of wasn't my feel or my deal. No, I don't think so. I can't think of anything that drove me nuts, or I just couldn't get the hang of it. I in general, I'll tell you this though. Like most bands these days, and this isn't anything new, a lot of bands play to a click track. When it comes to, even live performance, whether you got some tracks that you're playing to, like in Midnight Blue, we had some pre-recorded keyboard stuff or whatever. So the weird thing for me was playing to a click track, not because I couldn't play to a click track. And what a click track is, if nobody knows, is it's a metronome. It keeps time. So I'm hearing a clanging in my ear all throughout the night to keep the beat in time.
I use whiskey. I use whiskey personally. That's my click track. A bottle of whiskey. What? A bottle of whiskey is my click track.
Yeah, well, that'll give you different results. But anyways, getting used to playing that to Foreigner music was just a little weird in the beginning, because none of that music was recorded to a click track. It all kind of pushed and pulled and had a natural feel, because in the 70s, drummers didn't play to those things. And to all of a sudden take that music and kind of quantize it to a definite tempo was just weird. I could play to a click track all day long. That's not the problem. It's just playing music that wasn't recorded that way now has to be kind of sterilized. So that was a little weird.
So no click track at all when you're playing with Lou Gramm?
No, I did use the click track. I did.
You did use a click track. Got it.
Yeah, that was the weird thing, was getting used to playing it with a click track, because the stuff was never recorded. Okay, I get you now.
But did he ask? Was it because he wanted that, or what was the reason behind it then?
Well, because there were some tracks, keyboard things, and just a couple of vocal things that actually were on tracks. And in order for me to play to those tracks, any drummer, just about everybody's doing it these days. This is no mystery to at least us musicians, but to the people that don't know what I'm talking about, when you go see a concert these days, times out of 10, there's stuff recorded on a computer. The
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Right. So, but we didn't rely on it as a crutch. If the computer went down, everybody sang live anyways, and the recorded stuff, which were just some keyboard parts here and there, we could have gotten by without it. See, we didn't use it as a crutch, like some bands do. So, anyways, that was in place by the time I got in the band. They were already doing that, so it wasn't anything special when I got in the band.
Right. Okay. So I just wasn't sure if you used it, like you said, on Midnight Blue type thing, or if it was for every song.
Yeah, pretty much every song.
This is just a personal question. Did you guys play Angel with a Dirty Face, or I think that's what it's called? That was a great song that Lou had on that album.
Yeah, that's a great song. He's got a lot of really good solo stuff, but no. By the time I was in the band full time, we only did Midnight Blue.
Okay.
Back when I subbed, back in those days, 10 years prior, they were doing Ready or Not, for instance.
Nice.
So,
yeah.
Which is a great song.
So you're with Lou, but Lou isn't playing every day and every month. So what does Rob Mount do when he's not playing with Lou Gramm? And we'll get into the scrap metal thing, but besides that, like, do you have other gigs? Do you play in original bands, any of that type of stuff, or what do you spend your time doing?
Okay. Well, and just to kind of just clarify what you're saying, I'm not with Lou anymore, but when I was with Lou, we would play, 20, 25 gigs a year. So, right, you can't make a living solely on that. It just, as
Right.
nice as Lou, as generous was with, paying the guys, that doesn't cut it for a living only. So, I teach drums, so I have a few students that I do that with. I do have a band, like a fun band that I play with in the upstate New York area where we, go out for fun and play a bunch of cover tunes that we like that haven't been played to death by everybody else, try to keep it a little more interesting. So I go and do that. And I'm not ashamed to say that I've had a part-time day job too, even when I was with Lou. And, a lot of guys don't want to admit they have day jobs, but you'd be surprised how many guys that are famous and have big names that actually do have a day job that don't want to admit it to anybody because they want to give that illusion of being a rock guy. But my wife's cousin, I work for him. And you do what you got to do to make a living. There's no shame in that.
100%. So what is your advice to someone, since we'll say, 80% of your time is in music or was or whatnot? Like, what are some of the key things that a young and up and coming drummer or any artist should keep in mind? Is it about making new connections all the time? Do you use social media? Like, how do you keep the work coming in?
Well, yeah, and social media is, to me, at least in my opinion, is pretty huge these days. First of all, the best thing you could do, I would tell somebody young, is if possible, and Tony Bon Jovi, John's cousin, told me this many years ago. He told me, and you really kind of got to go where the people are in terms of who's in the business, where the hot spots are. I mean, that's your best bet right off the bat, is to go to Nashville, go to LA, go to Vegas, go to New York. Those are the hot spots. You really need to be there to mingle with who's who and have that personal contact, because nothing beats that. Nothing tops that. If you're living where I am, even a lot of great musicians have come out of Rochester other than Lou, such as, Steve Gadd and Chuck Mangione. But Rochester still is kind of, it's not anywhere of a hotbed of music in terms of getting somewhere in the music business, generally speaking. So that's number one. Number two, if you can't do that right away, the social media is really your best bet, in my opinion, because at least that's a way to get yourself out there to the world. And, you just have to get lucky and work hard to have somebody find you there, because the downside of social media is anybody can do it. And so the floodgates are open. You're one of a billion people out there doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And it's kind of like getting record deals back in the day. A label would find somebody good because it went through kind of a vetting purpose where, somebody would send a tape to a record label, somebody would listen to it, and if it was good, pass it up the chain. So it went through some filters. Nowadays, there's no filters because, like I said, everybody's out there doing the same thing. So it's easier to get your stuff out there and be out there, but it's harder to weed through all the noise because, like I said, anybody can do it.
I love your Instagram, too, where you have your Name That Tune. That's kind of cool.
Well, you got to kind of come up with some sort of, I don't know if you want to use the word gimmick. You have to differentiate yourself from other people. You got to do something to figure out how you can stand out. And that's just one of the things I came up with, where, for those who don't, follow me on any of the social medias, is where I would, film a bunch of drum videos, whether it's an intro to a song or a famous beat, and, just I put it up there and people have to guess what it is and who the drummer is. And it's just a way to have fun, and then the other side of that is to do it on a consistent basis, because you want to get people used to finding you every Friday doing whatever it is that you're doing, or every Monday. You don't want to be sporadic with things. People like to be on a schedule. You know what I mean? Like a friend of mine used to have a food cart, and he would just do the food cart thing, set up shop whenever he felt like it. And who's going to rely on that when they don't know when you're going to be there? They need to know you're going to be there at a certain time. And to me, it's the same way with posting content, which is why I do my Name That Tune stuff on Fridays.
Well, it's funny because to show you it works, I shared that with friends of mine that are drummers, and I go, do you know this one? Check this out, right? Because, and that's what you're looking for, the engagement, right, of people doing that. And then somebody says, hey, this guy's pretty cool. Let me follow him. By the way, it's official Rob Mount on Instagram. And now you're getting some more, and you never know what's going to lead to what.
Well, it's funny you say that, and it's very funny you say that, because that's how, at least as far as I know, that's how I got the scrap metal gig, a couple weeks ago, believe it or not. And the funny thing is, I'll tell you a real quick story. As I was listening to another podcast with a famous drummer, I won't say who it is because I don't want anybody to think I'm talking bad about him, but this guy was more or less saying, and it's easy for him to say because this guy was established, but he was saying, the social media thing's cool and all that, but you're never really going to get a gig from being on social media. And maybe 99 out of 100 times, he's probably right. Again, being somewhere in person and socializing people with person is more valuable than just having stuff up on YouTube. But so about 3 weeks ago, I get a message on LinkedIn, of all of the social medias, LinkedIn, from Gunnar Nelson. And him and I had followed each other on LinkedIn. And I'd forgotten about it. He never interacted with any of my stuff, never liked it, never commented. So that's how I got the scrap metal gig. He writes me a note. He says, hey, we have a gig coming up. It's last minute. Our regular drummer can't do it. We would love to have you do it. I love your videos. And you seem like you'd be a good fit to do this. Give me a call, blah, blah, blah.
So let's that's a perfect segue, because I was going to go to scrap metal, but I just want to establish here. So scrap metal is a band that was started by Gunnar, right? Gunnar Nelson, and it's got a ton of amazing rock stars. Playing all songs that you would know. I think I was watching his EPK, and there's something like 50 million albums sold between those that were playing within scrap metal. And people
right.
like Kelly Keagy were drumming and playing, right, from Night Ranger. You've got Mr. Big. So what did you know about scrap metal, I guess, first, before you even got into playing with them?
Well, I'd heard of it, and there's a few of these things going around, all-star groups that do this. The scrap metal, there's Kings of Chaos, which, funny enough, Lou Gramm just did this summer. He did a couple gigs with those guys, which is another group of famous guys. There's another thing called Rock Pack that Lou does or did with John Payne from Asia, and he had his group of merry men that would do this thing. So there's a few of these types of things. So I'd heard of it. I didn't know too much about it. They don't play a lot. They do maybe 5-7 gigs a year that scrap metal does. So, I was aware of it, but I didn't, never really researched much of it because they don't do a whole lot, at least as of this point. But it had been around for a while. I think they're one of the longest running types of organizations like this. So
when you're going to go play with scrap metal, take me through this. So you, Gunnar says, we want you to do this. Where was the show? It
was in Wisconsin, Dells, Wisconsin.
Okay, so it's in Wisconsin. Do you know who's going to be there and the song listing? Because it changes, right? Depending, like, is Mark Slaughter going to be there? It just depends, right, on who's available. So Were you given all the particulars and the songs that were being played that night?
Well, his initial message to me on LinkedIn did tell me who's going to be in the band, so I knew who was going to be the band. So, when you see Eric Martin from Mr. Big, right, and, Ted Poley from Danger and all that kind of stuff, I was like, wow, this is going to be a pretty cool lineup. As far as the songs go, it was pretty quick when I got the songs. Within a couple days, I knew what songs I had to get going on. So,
do you chart music or no?
I can, and it's funny you say that because if I have to, I will. But I try my best not to. I mean, I went to music school my whole life. I all the way through college. I majored in music education, although I never finished it. But so I know how to chart. I kind of do my own charts. A lot of guys kind of
Yeah, you make it up the way that you can understand. I do the same thing. I'm not. My dad was a drumming virtuoso guy who played jazz, big band, could chart stuff, and I just wanted to play like Van Halen. Like, I mean, I didn't give a shit. So I was just like, this is how this goes. This is where it stops. This is how many I count for. I can make it that way, and that's probably what most people end up doing. So you play this gig, and just what was that experience like? Besides the fact that you seriously need a drum tech to look after your cymbal issues. But besides that, what was it like sitting there and playing some of these songs? And what were some of the songs? I saw you played one or two Boston songs, right?
Oh, we did more than that. As far as Boston goes, we did the most Boston. That was we did like five Boston songs because Barry Goodrow, who was the guitar player in Boston other than Tom Schultz, he was there. We did 3 Vixen songs, because Janet Gardner, the singer of Vixen, was there. We did 3 L.A. Gun songs. We did 3 Danger Danger songs. We did 3 Mr. Big songs. And at the end, we did an all skate jam of rock and roll at the end. So I think that was all of it.
That's so amazing. And you were mentioning Ted. And so Ted, I met Ted a few years ago, did a couple of interviews with Ted at the Rock Pile in Toronto. And because I know the promoter well, and there was a gig and he called me up to sing Naughty Naughty, and I don't sing, like I drum, I don't sing, but it was a rather shit show. Last time he played, I was going to try to get there for sound check. I really wanted to play, even at sound check, Bang Bang, because it was always one of my favorite drumming songs, and just the attitude. And I'm a huge Danger Danger fan, but that's kind of cool. You got to play with those guys. Will you get to do it again? I know Bobby Rock now is the drummer, right, in the band. And if you don't know Bobby Rock, he's a drummer for Leader Ford. Well, he's the drummer in Nelson, I guess, or was for many years. So I assume that's how he got the gig.
Slaughter.
He's in Slaughter, right. So we get another chance to play in this band, Scrap Metal, or is it kind of like a one-off?
Well, for now, it was just a sub gig. They needed somebody. And I don't think Bobby's done it in a while. There's another guy they've been using called Jeff Bowders, I think is his name, that does it. And I'm not sure who he plays with. I've heard his name before. So he's kind of the regular drummer, although Gunnar was telling me, Kelly Kagi as honorary first drummer, I guess, or whatever, always gets a call first just to be kind, but he's so busy, he never really can do it anymore. So this was just as of now anyways, just a one-off gig. And I mean, I hope it leads to more. It would be fun. I got along great with everybody. The gig went really well other than some wacky technical drum things.
I was watching that going, what's wrong with that cymbal? And what's wrong with that one? And I was like...
Dude, first of all, I film every show I've done. Ever since the second year I was in Lou Gramm all the way through to this show, I've got a real good camera that I set on the side of the stage, or side of my riser, and I film all this stuff. So, it makes for a good blooper video every once in a while. And I think that night in Wisconsin would fill up one highlight reel just of bloopers alone. I mean, I had Ted, speaking of Ted, he got up and fixed the last time the cymbal went crooked on me or whatever, because he played drums. So he goes, dude, I watched it all night. I had to get up there and fix it. So, and funny enough, real quick on Ted, I was in an original band almost 30 years ago, which is, makes me feel real old. And we actually opened up for Danger Danger in Syracuse, New York, back in like 1990. And him and I had a good talk about that. And, it's kind of funny. Ted's a great guy. Him and I became fast friends or whatever. And
he's got a really cool band too. The guys are just awesome in his band. I got to hang out with them too. And Ted, every time he comes to town, I'm not that close to Toronto, not that far, but a couple hours, and I try to get to see him because Danger Danger, one of my favorites back then. Let's real quick switch to drums. I've looked at I look at a lot of things, photos, videos. You seem to have a very similar setup for the most part. Something you've always played with 2 rack toms in front of you, a couple floor toms, and I guess it depends if you have 1 or 2 kick drum on where you're playing. But have you had the same setup for quite some time? Because I know through the years a lot of drummers change them, right?
Yeah, a lot of guys do. I never have, and it's always kind of been that way ever since. I don't know, for probably forever. It's just the way I did as a kid, and just stuck with it. Would I love to experiment with maybe more things and set up some more drums or change a few things around. Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'm one of those people that once I like something and it works for me, I stick with it. It's the same thing with eating food at a restaurant. I order the same thing that I know I like. I'm not I like to experiment. So,
here's something I noticed. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. The funny thing is, our stage guy in Lou Gramm's band always used to get on my ass because my kick drum would always be angled away as if I had two kick drums. I always only used one. But even when I used one and had the double pedal, I would still angle the kick drum like I do. It wouldn't be facing straight out with the toms on the kick. It was always angled the other way. And Vinny Appice from Dio's band always did it that way too, even though he was never a double kick player. And that became comfortable. And our stage manager always used to rail me. He goes, "What are you doing that for? You only have one kick." He'd always get on my case because he had to set up the plexiglass screen around me. Right. He always gave me a hard time. And I'm like, "Because that's the way it is, dude. That's the way I play."
Well, it's funny because when I saw your setup, and I did notice, the first thing I did notice was your kick was angled to the right. And I thought maybe that's because you were playing double kick a lot, or the shows I saw pictures of, maybe you only had one kick drum. So you just kind of get used to it, but I didn't know that was something you did all the time. Here's my question though. I watch your cymbals are relatively high. Mine are like that too, because I can't, number one, because I'm a sloppy drummer, which means if everything is too low, I'm going to hit 5 things at once. It's the way it is. So I have everything higher up and spaced out. So, and I like to play, I almost think of drumming as a sport. Because that's how I engage into the song. And that's why personally, I have an issue sometimes when I have to play quieter. Unfortunately, I'm one of these guys, if I have to play quieter, I have to play to a click so I don't slow down. It's just, I don't know what, something innate with me saying if I'm rocking out, I can play to the right tempo. And I have to have my cymbals high up there just to execute the dynamic that I want. And is that why you do it? It's just something you're comfortable with through the years? Because I tried to lower them, man, and I can't stand it.
Well, again, there's no thought behind it. It's just where I feel comfortable having them. I have, I'm not the tallest guy with the longest arm, but, I got, pretty good reach. So it's just where I feel comfortable hitting the cymbal. And, so that's just, it works for me. And it's weird because somebody commented on I put a picture of my drum setup from Scrap Metal up on social media, and somebody was commenting about how long my arms must be to where I have the cymbals. But, it just is what it is. The thing is, when you're playing, and this is something that I think non-musicians may or may not get as much as a musician would understand, but when you're playing, the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about your gear and where something is or how something's sounding or something's off. You know what I mean? You're in the moment, you're in that zone. Things should be flowing out of you without thinking. That's when you're locked in with the music. And so when somebody like a stage manager, wants to move your kick drum over an inch so the plexiglass screen looks better or whatever, he doesn't understand that severely can screw your night up. You know what I mean?
100%.
You don't want to be thinking about gear. You don't want to be thinking about stuff. You just want to be able to do it. And with drumming, like you said, it is kind of a sport. It's muscle memory. So when you're swinging your arms and hitting things, they need to be where they're supposed to be. You should be able to play your drums with your eyes closed. Seriously, it sounds funny, but if you really should be able to sit behind your drum set, close your eyes, and play pretty much flawlessly as if your eyes were open, because your arms and your legs should know where that stuff is. You shouldn't be thinking about it. You know what I mean? You should just be able to do it without thinking about it.
So it's interesting because today, after I talked to you, I have to talk to Dr. Nadia Azar, and I've talked to her before, and she is from the University of Windsor, and she does studies on a number of drummers, okay, about biomechanics, about just things, as far as drummers as athletes, about drumming injuries, like that's her scope, okay, and she's done some great things. And so my first question with this is that, have you ever, because of the way your kit is set up, experienced any, whether it's sore shoulders, whether it's fatigue, like the way your kit is set up, have you ever had any injuries, you think, because of that?
Well, Well, it's funny. Well, and I know where you're going with this, and the answer is no. I never. Luckily enough, I think about this once in a while because I'm getting old. I'm almost 52, so I'm not 25 anymore. But I've never had a problem at all with any joints, carpal tunnel stuff. None of that. Now, do freak things happen where you hit yourself on the nose with a drumstick when you're twirling it or something? Sure, but that's not what you're asking. But however, I will tell you, I'll try and make it quick. But there's a funny little story. So a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago, I was out of my regular drumsticks and had to go to a drum store to get something close. And it was a little heavier than I was used to, but I had to use them. And so halfway through the night, I started feeling pain in my left wrist, slamming on the snare drum all night. And I thought at that point, I was probably like 30 years old. I'm like, oh, crap, here it comes. I'm starting to get old. The drumming's catching up to me. And so it hurt so bad playing match grip, which is how I play. I switched over to traditional, which I started out as, but I never really play that way. So I played traditional long enough for 4 or 5 songs until I wore the skin off between my thumb and my first finger because I didn't have any calluses there because I wasn't used to playing that way. So when that hurt too much, I went back to the match grip, and I just kept going back and forth until the one pain got so bad that the other pain wasn't as bad. Turns out I figured out the problem. The problem wasn't me. It was the fact that I was using sticks that were a little heavier and bigger than what I was used to.
Right. And
so I kind of lucked out there. But no, other than that, no, I've been lucky. Knock on wood. Never had a problem.
Do you do any, I don't know, like, do you go to the gym? Do you run? Like, what do you do, I guess, to keep in shape, or does drumming keep you in shape for the most part?
Well, drumming definitely can keep you in shape if you're getting into it and actually playing. If you're just, kind of tapping along and stuff to keep quiet because you don't want to tick your wife off or whatever, that's not really going to do you much good for exercise. But if you're actually playing drums, it's a very good exercise. But in addition to that, I mean, I was never a big giant athlete at all in school, although I played some sports. But when I got the gig with Lou, I decided to drop some weight. Not that I was really big, but I could have, I lost 30 pounds. And how I did that was just walking. I walk a lot still to this day. I walk with my dad a lot. We'll put in like a half hour, 45-minute walk, a few times a week, and just try to watch a little bit of what I'm eating anyways. And so I dropped 30 pounds in my first, 4 months or so playing with Lou.
That's a lot.
I've kept it off since.
Wow, good for you. I didn't mean to go in that direction. It just I was looking at this thing and I was thinking, wow, I got you on the phone. So couple final questions. First of all, as a drum teacher, because you are a drum teacher, and we'll get to your socials and how people can reach out to you. But what should every drummer who's kind of up and coming right now be working on? Is it rudiments? Is it reading music? Is it understanding dynamics in music? Is it learning as much different types of music as possible? What do you recommend?
Well, all of that. Everything you just said. It depends on how old they are, and it depends on each individual person, of course. But in general, what you just said, I mean, I want my kids to know how to read. A lot of guys, not just drummers, but a lot of famous musicians can't read music. They don't have any idea theoretically what they're playing. They just do what they do and play by ear, which is good. But I want my students all read out of books, drum set books, snare drum book. And it'd be great to listen to as much variety in music as possible, but it's so hard. See, the thing you're battling today as a teacher is the attention span of kids and anybody. I mean, everybody's attention span is like zero these days. You know what I mean? Yep. So it's really hard to break through that. I also, as a drummer, just as a little note, as I always get my kids when they're playing out of a rock book or a jazz book, to keep their left foot chicken on the hi-hat when they're playing a beat, even if it's not written into the music. I make sure that left foot's going on at least 2 and 4 when they're playing the beat. To me, that's very important to do. A lot of people just clamp the hi-hat down and only play it when they're hitting it with their stick. They don't keep it going up and down with their foot. And so I want my kids to be able to do that too. So
I never understood that, because to me, my left foot is always going. It doesn't matter if I'm on the ride cymbal or I'm playing the hi-hat. It might just be my heel when it's on the hi-hat because I don't want it to open up too much. But I don't know how else you keep time. Like, I mean, to me, that's the perfect meter. Is my left foot is just keeping me where I got to be, you know? So even when I do a fill, I don't play double kick. I'm not very good at it at all. So I don't pretend to be, nor do I try to be. So I stick to what I'm good at, which is just 2 and 4 hard hitting, you know? And when I go to do my fills, that left foot is always up and down on the hi-hat.
You know how I learned that from? Is believe it or not, and you know, when I was 10 years old, I thought he was the greatest drummer in the world. Was Peter Criss from Kiss? I mean, his background was jazz, and you know, he you know, at 10 years old, you think a guy like that, because you're enamored with Kiss, is the best drummer in the world, and to some extent, he was really influential on me because he had that left foot going all the time. And I think it's a lost art because a lot of these kids keep their left foot on the left kick drum pedal,
right?
And they clamp down the hi-hat, as I said, and they don't have a clue. They just use that left foot on it never comes off that bass drum pedal. And man, you're missing out on a lot. I always when I'm sitting in the car, I actually did a video on this. It's on my YouTube page somewhere at this point, where it was just meant to be funny. But what I was saying was, when you're driving along and you're tapping along to your favorite music or whatever, you can't really use your right foot as the kick drum because it's on the brake or the gas, you know, but that's a perfect opportunity to use the left foot in the car, unless you're driving a standard and you need it on the clutch, but we can figure it out.
So here's my final question, which has nothing to do with drums. But it has to do with you as a musician and as a lover of rock music. I figured I would ask you this question. Motley Crue is coming back to tour, and I want to know what you think of that.
Yeah. Dude, I had a premonition you were going to ask me that. Don't ask me why. I knew you were going to ask me that.
It's the last question on my. I don't even write the questions out, right? Like, I just go in a conversation. I know what I want to talk. But it was just, I wrote that one down when I called you. I said I got to ask Rob about Motley Crue.
Well, I tell you what. I mean, first of all, more power to them. I mean, if the money's there, and you know it's all about the money. Anybody that tells you that it's not about money, at least at certain levels, is full of you-know-what.
Absolutely.
So they're obviously making a killing on that. So, hey, more power to them. My biggest thing is, you know, ever since Ozzy back in the early 90s said, this is my No More Tours tour, ever since then, all these guys have been, you know, kind of saying, oh, we're going to retire. You know, there's all these farewell tours. Kiss did their farewell tour in the late 90s. I mean, it's you can't really buy it anymore. You know what I mean? It almost seems like it's a marketing ploy to get people to come out one last time, and then they turn around and say 3 years later, oh, you know, we missed it, we're back. You know, whatever. More power to them. You know, that's cool. I just don't buy it when people say it's a retirement tour. Yeah, okay. You know, I don't believe anybody.
I went to their final tour. Through the radio station, I got tickets and I went, and I'm a big Motley Crue fan. I've seen them a number of times. I play a number of their songs in a 80s hair rock band. And when this came out, and I think the best way to summarize it is, it's like anything else in life. You have a choice. You want to live with Motley Crue or you don't. It doesn't matter. If you don't want to go see them because you're mad, don't go. If you want to believe that, you know what, because I'm like you, I'm going to be 51 years old, and I'm thinking, if I can go see Motley Crue again, goddamn right I'm going. I don't give a shit. Like, I like Motley Crue. I don't care what they said or how, and I know there's integrity, and whatever. At the end of the day, you said it best. It's about money. Things change in life. I have so many people, and this is not a rant about it, but people that I know that were married. And I said to them, well, you entered into a contract with your wife. You've now left your wife and married somebody else. I don't understand. Right. Like, so these contracts, what are you worried about? You broke one and you went to another. Like, I don't know. Maybe that's a silly example, but I'm trying to make it make sense for people that, you know, like, fuck.
Dude, people don't realize when you get married, people don't realize that you're entering a business contract. People never look at it that way. They just look at it as, I'm in love with this person and blah, blah, blah. And they don't realize, this is way off topic, but it's a business contract. And that's what this world is about, dude.
Right.
Money. Money is it. Some people follow the money. People are enamored with it. They worship it. You know, whoever started the world and runs this world really got us all hooked on the one thing, which is chasing money. And you try living without money. You can't, you know.
Listen, the only reason
everybody needs it.
The only reason I'm talking to you is because I'm getting paid big bucks to do it. What the hell?
Right.
I know.
Yeah, dude.
So listen, I've kept you long enough. Let's talk about your socials. I want you to plug, how people can find you for drum lessons. You got a great Instagram account. You got an awesome website too. So maybe throw that out there.
Oh, thanks, dude. My website is just my name. It's just www.robmount, which is MOUNT.com. On there, you can, there's a bunch of different tabs for different pages. You can find links to signing up for lessons there, or you can just email me at rob@robmount.com. So I try to update that when there's news to talk about. You can link to most of my socials from there, but for some reason you can't get to my personal Facebook page from there. You can only go to my you have like a music page, you know what I mean? But that's a whole nother story. That I don't do much with that. So you can just go to Facebook and type in my name, Rob Mount. You'll find me there. Instagram is official Rob Mount, and LinkedIn, same thing. A lot of musicians are getting into LinkedIn, even though it's more of a business thing. But I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. You just go to my website or Google me. You'll find me that way. So.
All right. This is the Industry 45 podcast show, gianttv.ca. Thanks, Rob.